Kings and queens, welcome back to the channel. Today we have something very exciting. We have the official King Dead by Daylight podcast. We need a better name. We'll think of one in the comments. It's been over a year since we've actually done one of these podcasts, and today we have an amazing cast for you guys, a great lineup, and everyone here today, including one extra, Linksy Time, will be participating in the ALS DVD charity event that is going to be taking place on July 10th and 11th. We hope to see you guys there. There's going to be more information. You can follow us all on our social medias to keep up to date with that. With that being said, it is time to introduce everybody. We'll start from left to right. And the first guest we have today is Dyllon, a fog whisperer for Dead by Daylight. Hello, Dyllon.
Oi. Oi. I have to do the customary 3. I guess I didn't think about it.
Oi, oi, oi. Next on the roster, we have Lydia, a Twitch partner and YouTube partner. How are you doing, Lydia?
Hi, I'm Lydia. I like long walks on the beach. Yeah, hi. How's it going?
And finally, as always, we have our good friend and fog whisperer, Mr. Paulie Esther. What up, Paulie?
Hello, everybody. How's it going today?
Alrighty, so today we have a bunch of topics that we are going to be talking about. It'll be timestamped on the video and in the description, so you guys are more than welcome to go to any part of the video to hear our opinions and thoughts about things. And the first thing that we're going to be talking about today is probably the biggest news for the year, which is the new Resident Evil chapter coming into Dead by Daylight. Obviously, we have Nemesis, we have Leon, we are going to be getting legendary skins for this, we got the new map, and all of this is going to be coming out quite soon on Tuesday, if I'm not mistaken. So I thought it'd be amazing for us to give our opinions just on what the chapter is and what it means to the game, how you guys feel about it, and yeah, the floor is yours, guys.
I guess, I mean, like, I'll dive in. I think there's something really special in the Resident Evil chapter. I mean, we saw last year Pyramid Head was the first game character to come to Dead by Daylight from a horror franchise, which for a while, you know, it's cool for like movies to be in games because it just benefits the movies. But in games, sometimes it's like, well, like in my mind, I'm like, will they license out their character? Will they just make their own type of game? Or, you know what I mean? It feels almost more competitive or something like that. So it was cool to see the collaboration of Pyramid Head, which I thought would be almost impossible considering Konami's not done anything with the character for a long time. And then we have now, you know, Resident Evil, which it just kind of, it makes the game more legitimate, you know, it just puts it further out there. Gonna bring in like, you know, so many new players, I think, that are adjacent to DBD and have maybe considered it a lot. And it opens the doors for more legitimacy, I think, to negotiate other licenses as well. So I'm just, you know, whether I like the map, like the killer, like the perks, it's totally a good thing for the game. I'm so excited for it.
Yeah, I agree. Go ahead.
First game character, Bill Overbeck will remember that. No,
all right, killer, game killer.
Gonna go there, but okay.
No, I'm genuinely really excited about this. I think, honestly, it's been a long time coming, but I mean, not only is this the 5-year anniversary for Dead by Daylight, as we know, it's the 25-year for Resident Evil as well. This is just such a good collaboration. And like we saw with Silent Hill last year, it brought a whole new audience to an older game, an older series, and really sort of expanded the world of horror for some of the younger players of the game. So I'm excited to see that happen again, but obviously Resident Evil is a lot more accessible. We're probably going to see a hell of a lot more people coming into Dead by Daylight as well. I think it'll be a really nice time of the year to bring everybody together, wholesome content.
Yeah, hopefully, right?
We hope.
Yeah, let's all be nice to the new people. All the new faces, everybody in the chat, let's be nice to the new people.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I feel like, I think we, obviously, the four, and I'm not trying to be like exclusory to people that, you know, that aren't educators or anything, but I think the four of us are really good about welcoming new people. I think we are accessible creators. And I think that, you know, a lot of people don't necessarily want to take on the role of like ushering in new people and answering all of their questions and all of that stuff, because it is a very like hefty role. But I'm excited for the new players that are coming in, and yeah, like what kind of Lydia said, it's so much bigger because Silent Hill really has an OG following, you know. A lot of people that are my age, right, or our age, should I say, understand Silent Hill, but like it's not necessarily gangbusters for younger people. And so when you talk Resident Evil, you have Resident Evil 8, you know, you have 7, or you have the older generation, the Code Veronica players, the OG 2 on the N64, like, so it's just got such a big fan base. And then with the Lady D thirst on Twitter and all that, there are people that are, you know, they played 8 and they're like, oh god, I gotta play all these others now because it was good. And so it's a cross generation pollination, if you will. And yeah, it's cool. And I'm excited for the new players, because I think that they are coming in at kind of the best time, and we'll talk obviously about this as a topic later. I think it's kind of the best time to ever hop into DBD. So
one thing for me, and King, maybe you want to write this down as a question if you ever get that Matthew Cote interview again. But to me, it begs the question. So we've seen this shift where they have gone from catering to people who are fans of slasher horror movies to now we have chapters of gamers catering to gamers, right? So with the Silent Hill and now Resident Evil, these are horror game chapters being brought in. So is that a purposeful shift by the company, or is it simply the licenses that are available compared to licenses that maybe aren't necessarily available or very convoluted, such as Jason and Friday the 13th? Or is this a conscious choice because it sells better? Like, are you more likely to convert a horror game fan into a Dead by Daylight fan, or you're more likely to convert a horror movie fan into a Dead by Daylight fan? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a great point.
Solid musing.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Another way you could look at it as well is video games are obviously, they're more recent than film. The horror video game culture in general has been more recent. We're kind of bridging a gap into more current horror by going into the video game world instead of just focusing on movies all the time. Like, yes, you still have more current horror movies coming out, but you don't really have those same iconic characters in the same way that you did with Freddy and Jason and Michael Myers. I mean, yeah, we still have Halloween movies being made, but we're seeing an awful lot of remakes of older things. Whereas in the horror game universe, there's just so much new content that's being explored all the time. There are these legendary characters that are coming in every other year, and you do have those cult followings to those games as well. It's not just like, oh, it's in movie theaters right now and then people forget about it in 6 months' time. It's things that people will replay over and over again because they genuinely have that connection to that game and relate to those characters, or can explore more lore in the game, and they find an affinity with those characters. So it could be that they're just making horror more current.
Right. That's a very good point as well. I think it also can definitely do with that. You know, obviously the most recent non-game that was massive was probably the Stranger Things chapter, when it comes down to how big it was. You know, they had their entire booth at Comic-Con, and it was all centered around Stranger Things. It was absolutely huge. And then, you know, coming on in with Konami, and now obviously with the Resident Evil franchise coming, I think it is kind of both. You know, you have things that are more recent. Obviously, there's so much hype for the 25th anniversary of Resident Evil, and then you bring it into DBD, a lot of those eyes that are playing Resident Evil, which I think already is, you know, killing it in sales in comparison to Resident Evil 7. I think it's done that numbers in just a week, are now going to be looking like, hey, they brought some of these amazing characters into Dead by Daylight. Let me go and take a look. So it's kind of both getting a big gaming industry to come into another game, and then obviously the relevancy with everything. So it's just amazing. What I'm really happy about, I know when I first picked up the game, you know, you still have that horror aspect. You see the killer and you're frightened, you run away and just toss pallets, and you're so scared playing with your friends. And I'm very happy that so much new people are going to experience that and then get into the whole DBD loop. And I remember watching videos for hours and hours every single day, trying to figure out how to be better, what can I do, And then getting to a point where, you know, like Dylan was mentioning as well, we start teaching some of the newer players on what they can do, how they can play the game, what they can learn and understand. And just the entire loop of everything is exciting. And I can't wait to see what comes out. And hopefully in a few days, everyone's going to be able to play it as well. Which brings us to our next point, the gameplay side of things. And obviously we got 2 new survivors coming on in with 6 perks for them. We got a new map, which is very iconic, the Raccoon City Police Department. And of course, we got our new killer, Nemesis. Now, there's a lot of talks about balancing. You know, the first question everyone asks is, where's Nemesis on the tier list? Like, literally, I play one game and everyone's like, all right, is he weak? Is he strong? What do we got to do with him? Obviously, we got a bunch of new survivor perks that, you know, are very different. It's things that we've never seen before. You know, we have flashbang grenades. We have flashes if you kick a generator. And of course, we have the new map. So we'll start with the map itself. There's been a lot of talks about it. A lot of people are 50-50 on how they feel about it gameplay-wise. How do you guys feel about the map? What do you guys think about it? And what changes would you make if you were to make any changes? Or do you think it's fine as is?
It's going to take time, I think. It's, I mean, I'm going to be comparing to Silent Hill here just because that's what I'm familiar with. But I mean, when Silent Hill came out, Midwich, that is just a square and it's true to the game as well. So I was already familiar with the map and I don't think it's too hard to get to grips with, find your bearings in. But this new one, the police department, I really struggle with, I can't lie. I like that they've stayed true to the lore again and the layout and so on and so forth to the original games, but it's an awful lot. There's that many narrow corridors leading into that many odd-shaped rooms, and it's very difficult, I think, by comparison, to try and visualize that and keep that sort of track of where you've been and where you're going to. So for me personally, I find it a bit disorientating. But yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna really struggle to see what killers can do well on that map too. I don't even want to play Nurse without a map offering when that comes out though.
That's fair.
I don't want to chance it.
I think, so for me personally, I'm sort of the opposite. Midwich, I'm a Silent Hill fan, but Midwich is from Silent Hill 1. So that kind of escaped me. I didn't understand the map super well. And I understand a lot of people's confusion with it. You know, the hallways, it's easy to not know what hallway you're in and stuff like that. If we look at Resident Evil, there are going to be some of the same issues. As somebody who has spent, I think, 40 hours doing like digging and researching that map, the new Resident Evil map, it falls into the same tropes that Midwich does, where it is confusing and it's fairly large. Midwich is not considered large, but it's 2-story, so but almost all of the pallets are stagnant. They don't move. If they do, they literally move like 2 inches. They don't change. Most of them are very unsafe, if not nearly all of them. There's, I think I counted 3 like quote unquote god pallets that are basically impassable. So from a killer perspective, it is very large in terms of like the map, but it's got something that's like incredible that goes for it. Unlike Midwich, because on Midwich there's 2 stories and to like get up and down, it's like kind of, you have to run all the way to one end of the hallway or whatever. But with the RCPD, you have the main room, right, with the big statue. If you guys are familiar with Resident Evil like 2 or Resident Evil 2 Remake, it's the exact same RCPD. It is a 1-for-1. But there's, RCPD West and there's RCPD East. So there's like the main room, then there's a west side and there's an east side. And as a killer, it's going to be really easy to just completely ignore the west or the east side. Wherever the most gens spawn, just don't even go to the other side. Just like 3 gen on one side of the map or something like that. And that leaves you with maybe 4 pallets that you have to bust. And there's, on each side, there's 2 ways up and down. I think the map is very large, but I think it, unlike Midwich, where you have to go all the way down the hallway and then take a left, go all the way down that hallway. This one feels like as a killer, it'll be easier to have more sort of territorial control. from my perspective anyway. I think people will have to see it and get into it. And I'm gonna plug a video I'm working on. I'm working really hard on a 40-minute map
How
breakdown.
dare you?
I'm working very hard on it's a 40-minute map breakdown, and if you've played like a Legend of Zelda game where there's a mini map in the bottom like right-hand corner or whatever, the map breakdown is me exploring the map, and then in the bottom right-hand corner, it's the entire layout of everything that you see, telling you where generators are and things like that.
Wow.
And that's the good thing about this as opposed to Midwich is survivors have such a easy time now looking for generators because every room has like a light bulb outside of the, like there's the doorway to the room, there's like a sign that says what the room is, and then there's a light bulb. And if that light bulb is like flickering, there's a gen in that room. Outside of that, a gen will obviously like could be in a hallway, which you will see because all the hallways are lengthy. So
kind of like Leary's with the signs that blink.
Yep, absolutely. Except it's like 1,000 times more obvious, I think, because it like these light bulbs are just like right in your face. But yeah, so I think when that's my hot tip for learning where gens are at minimum. But I think it is a big map. I think it's, big indoor maps. I don't like indoor maps because from a survivor and killer perspective, the cat and mouse gets a lot harder to figure out because you can't see 4 feet in front of you. But I think that there are potentially things that were taken in consideration. So, like I said, the unsafe pallets and the way that like killers can exert pressure and things like that, that are different from other maps. But we'll have to see it.
So you think that the size of the map was made up for by having so many unsafe pallets to make it so that the chases are quicker? So am I getting the point right on that?
Yeah, holding W is going to be pretty strong on the map, but at the end of the day, like I said, killers will have a lot more of an ability to, if I see that there are 4 gens on the east side of the map, then I'm not really going to travel to the west side of the map too often, right? I'll let those gens fly so that, at some point survivors are going to be right here where I need them to be all the time, kind of thing. And killers like Doc will shine, I think, here because it is a stacked like map, very much kind of like Gideon and things like that. So I think you'll be able to like catch people easy, and I think Wraith will do okay. Nurse will be indoor map, but,
oh, no.
But yeah, I think that I think there is a lot of unsafe stuff. There's one what I would consider God window that's questionable in the east office, but I think everything else is survivors are going to be holding W or hiding is going to be like their strongest tool. Whether that's healthy, I don't know, but the pallets and things aren't really anything to be scared of from a killer perspective, in my opinion.
Well, I went on a 1-hour tour with a friend of mine in a custom match, and he gave me a breakdown of the flow of the map, explained what every room was within the lore of Resident Evil and stuff like that. So it was very enlightening for me, just helped me with my map awareness so that I can, know where I am on the map and tell others where I am in the map, etc. And you correct me if I'm wrong since you've done so much research on this, Dyllon, but one thing that I noticed is that you can't travel from the east wing to the west wing without going through the great room in the middle, right? So this kind of brings up your point about how you can compartmentalize this map as killer and keep it from one side to the other. And I don't know how much killers are going to want to defend that center gen, because if they want to keep control of that center gen and make sure that they know what side survivors are moving to, stuff like that. One problem I did notice that was brought up to me, and I verified it, is along those center room balconies, if you get a hook in the corner on the balcony, the killer can just like block it. You cannot literally get to the hook. The killer can just stand there on those narrow balconies. So unless you're bringing a ladder to climb up to that second level, you can't rescue that person. So I'm hoping that the devs have seen the comments that I've given them about that, and maybe make those kind of like those areas where either move the hooks or make it like those areas where they have in the basement where you can move through the killer if they're standing in those areas. But yeah, that was one glaring problem I saw there. But I mean, I don't know. How often are you going to get downed up in that area? Not sure, but
Yeah. I can scrub back through the like rounds I made footage wise and take a look. I actually didn't notice hooks up there, so if you caught that, then that is a kind of an L on my part. I'll take a look and see though.
we did have it on PTB. That after somebody told me about it, then when I saw it was there, then I went to investigate. I'm like, yeah, you can't get past the killer up here.
Yeah, that is a little spooky. If that is the case, which in that case, I think that they'll just need to remove that hook spawn. I think it's the best way to do it, to be honest.
Yeah, it's
but yeah,
much more complicated to have a removal of collision area, I would assume, but I don't. What do I know?
Yeah, I think you are right based on me just scrubbing through, but yeah, that is a bit of a problem for sure. I will say the basement locations on this map are super interesting. The configuration of the basement's actually different than normal, marginally.
Yeah, why do you think it has that depth to it? I was like, why did they do this? Make the basement so deep with so many stairs to get down?
It's very much like Temple of Purgation almost, where you just feel like you're
you're going down and down and down.
Yeah, it's I don't really know. I'll say the basements aren't in like a particularly advantageous spot for killers, so I'm not sure. I don't know, maybe that is to offset, like the depth is to offset that, but the basement also just looks weird because you always know with the basement, you go down the stairs, you take a left, there's 2 lockers right there. That's not the case in these basements, which is
that's completely different.
Yeah, I don't know why either, but it is weird. Yeah, so the map's confusing, but once you know it, it's I don't know, it's very interesting. I don't think it's very, I don't know. It's hard to say. I'd have to really, because when when you play PTB, you're playing against like a rank 17 and a rank 1 so you don't really have a team that's like trying to demolish you or anything. It's going to be hard to figure out kind of where it lies on difficulty, but I very much like Midwich. Whether it's a good map or a bad map, I visually like it, so I think I'll enjoy being there. So
yeah, the visuals are super duper impressive, and they honestly always kill it with the visuals. And having that one-on-one copy from Resident Evil, it's amazing, and I think the OG fans are gonna love it. And gameplay wise, as you guys mentioned, it is very large, it is very big, and I think a lot of killers are going to eventually find strategies, especially when running perks like Corrupt Intervention or something like that. You could just pick what side you want to be on and then just relax. You don't need to even worry about anything. So it'll be quite interesting to see how it all plays out.
Yeah, I will say the optimization, considering the size of the map, like even in the PTB, it didn't feel like I was like dropping massive amounts of frames, when I was near like the helicopter crash, which is this crazy visual sort of almost spectacle, and the occasional stutter and things like that, which I almost just expect, but it ran pretty good. So I'm excited to see how it runs on console and things like that too.
Yeah, for sure. I know Lydia has no lag with that new PC she got too. She's sitting nice and toasty.
I think I've dropped a grand total of 2 frames since I got it, and it's bliss.
All right.
Like when you can count the frames.
You're like, perfect. This is exactly what I needed. Alrighty. Let's talk about some of the perks. Obviously, we got more perks than we normally do, considering we have 2 survivors. We can also mention the killer perks in here, and then we'll talk about Nemesis after. How are you guys feeling about these perks? I'm pretty happy with them. I think they're more interesting on the survivor side. They have some mechanics. You obviously can make a bunch of flashbangs now, and I believe it's even uncapped, which I'm sure they will probably change. And then obviously Jill has a perk as well. I don't remember all the names off the top of my head, where you can plant pretty much a stun explosive in a generator. And I didn't notice, but if you are kicking that generator and you do get stunned, you have to kick it again. And I'm just sitting there with Pop Goes the Weasel, and I kick it, and I'm like, oh yeah, it's done. And the gen has not even been touched. On the survivor side, or killer side, there's also some interesting perks. One that caught my attention, as I'm sure quite a few people as well, is the perk that allows you to see the survivors as soon as they spawn in, so you can immediately go to their generalized spawn location and start putting on some pressure. How are you guys feeling about these perks? Do you think any of these have the potential to be meta-inducing, or, what changes can become the meta? What do you guys think about these perks? What's your favorite? Which one's your least favorite? Do you think they're just filler? How are you guys feeling?
I am, on the Survivor side, I think they did a phenomenal job of being inventive. Being able to create a flashbang grenade as Leon is fun. It's not the strongest thing in the world, but I think kind of what makes Survivor fun for me is not necessarily the escape, but going for stupid plays like trying to flashbang save your teammate, right? Or head on into a flashbang, right? Like,
right.
That stuff is super fun, and it feels like that was taken into consideration with this. And I already, I'm excited. The sort of surveillance perk that is now on Leon, right, which is like rookie something or another, rookie spirit, I think, where he can see any gens that are regressing, is super good information, I think, especially in that, there's 3 people left and I'm on a gen, but it's like got 1%. Is there another gen I could work on? And you see a gen turn white across the map, it's regressing. You're like, oh, people were over there on a gen, I think that's just maybe not meta, but like super unique, good info, and it's a good like ruin. It'll be interesting to know like who's tapped a gen where, stuff like that. I think that's fun. I think Jill's is super interesting. The explosion perk. I'm gonna call it explosion perk for now.
Blast mine.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, blast mine.
Super interesting. I don't know. I don't know that it'll be used often. I think trapping a gen will be really cool. Because when the killer's blinded, they're blinded for 4 seconds. So it is like a lengthy stun. And then you do have to kick it again, which is another 2.6. So it does grant you some distance, I guess, if you need it. But if a killer stopped to kick the gen anyway, you probably were getting distance before. So I don't know how practically it'll be used, but again, sounds fun. Jill has that perk where after I think it's Resurgence, she gets unhooked and she has 50% health after being unhooked. Super weird and neat. Like, throw that in with Solidarity, have a great day. And then she's got the Totem Cleansing perk, which when I read that, I clutched my pearls. I was like, excuse me, you can do what with totems? Being able to hop on a totem immediately and cleanse it 20% faster, and then see another totem. It's the totem furthest from you, and then like the cleanse speed just stacks. Like that's, I actually think it's like maybe potentially too strong in like the wrong hands. Like you throw it together with small game and you just bust up Ruin Undying, Devour or whatever, like immediately. As a killer main, of course. But I don't know. It's interesting, And then I actually think that Nemesis got kind of not the bad end of the stick, but I think they were thinking about new players when they made some of his perks. At least Lethal Pursuer, right? What King said, being able to see people when they spawn in is going to be. I think that's what new players struggle with the most, is they spawn in and they just run around looking for somebody. They have no idea where they're going. I think this is a very like new player friendly perk. Coincidentally, I also think that it's going to be like an insane tournament perk where a nurse is going to spawn in and just like blink right to where people are. And it's so, but it's dead for the end of the match, or like, after 7 seconds, you get no use out of it. So like if you bring it, you have to be like, well, I guess, I just don't have a perk after this, which
huge trade-off for a slot. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And Eruption, super unique perk. I don't think it's potent, but I think it's fun and nice, and then what's the other one that you hit a survivor and anyone else who is injured becomes oblivious for a certain amount of time. I think that could be very strong. Yeah, Hysteria. Yeah,
that's definitely gonna bring some poop your pants moments, I think.
Yeah, I think Hag will have fun with that perk. I think like any hit and run killer, like if I play Myers with like Nemesis, play with your food and that, and I just like I'm zooming across the map or something. I don't know. I think it'll be a lot of fun. So you know, I like them. I think most of them are healthy. I don't think anything's OP. I don't think anything's really in need of like major changes. I like all of them a pretty fair amount. Like I feel like they're just inventive. They're trying to think outside the box a bit at least, which I like. I talked a lot. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
One thing that I try to consider whenever new chapters get released is who's going to benefit the most out of the perks. So will they cater more towards newer players? Will they cater more towards people who have more experience in the game? Will they cater towards tournament players? Things like that. And I think one of the things that I really enjoyed about the chapters that they've put out over the last year or so is every chapter seems to have a good mix of a perk that'll be helpful to beginners, a perk that'll be helpful to people who want to get inventive and want a bit more of a challenge in the game or something unique. And I think they've done exactly that again. Bite the Bullet from Leon, where obviously you don't get a penalty from failing skill checks, in the sense that, you know, you don't get that loud noise notification. You don't really get as much of a regression to your progress bar. And then you've got other things as well, like the flashbang. That's probably going to be more fun to people who understand, you know, how much is 70% of a gen or 50% of a gen, and where's my nearest locker? How can I locate it? And then, I'm going to go over and find the killer and use it effectively. So there's a good mix for sure. Same again with Jill, probably knowing when to put that blast mine on the generator. Counterforce, like Dylan said, is going to be scarily strong, I think. Especially you stack it with something like, I don't know, resilience, which is going to increase your cleansing speed again. Small game is obviously going to tell you where or what general direction the nearest totem to you is. There's definitely a lot of threat to hex builds with that perk for sure. As far as Nemesis goes, though, I'm actually quite interested that Dylan said that I think newer people are gonna get the most benefit out of Lethal Pursuer, because I don't know, I feel like there is the potential to have the sort of whispers effect, where if you're on a huge map and you bring in Lethal Pursuer, you see survivors going in one direction, so you go over there and you're like, well, I saw them going this way, so I need to spend about 30 seconds to a minute just wandering this one area trying to find where the survivor's gotten to, and obviously that's all valuable time that the survivors could be doing the objective or hiding, whatever it is. So I think it does need to be used quite carefully, because people think, or I've heard a lot of people say, oh, this is a meta-changing perk. This is the first meta-changing perk that we've seen in a while. And I feel like if people get too hung up on that, then they're going to use it all wrong. And also the consideration as well that this will put you down to, after the first 7 seconds in the game, the whole rest of the game you're playing with only 3 perks. So I don't know. I feel like there's a little bit of an expectation of Lethal Pursuer, but I don't necessarily think it's going to be utilized properly. So it'll be interesting to see how people play with these perks when they come out. But at the minute, I'm just sort of keeping my cards to my chest. I want to see how it goes.
Yeah, I think I would agree that it's easy to misuse. I think, you know, every perk really, but yeah, the good news is that I hope anyway, 7 seconds is good amount of travel time, and if survivors are ranked 20 and the killer's ranked 20, for instance, right, like new players all hopping in, I think Pursuer points them in a very specific direction, whereas I think new players with whispers are like trying to listen for something. They don't even see the perk light up, like, what am I doing? And so I think Lethal Pursuer, yeah, is specific. I think you're absolutely correct, though. It's like if Survivor spawned in and just hide, they could definitely just out-hide somebody for sure. But I feel like maybe, at least with this perk, there's something like so specific that survivors can just be, or killers can just be like, okay, they are there. And like, at least they know, instead of like, I think Whispers is going off and I'm not sure. But to your point of meta changing, I don't think so. I don't think, like, I'm not running this perk because I know spawns, and I think at a medium to high level, I just don't, the value's not there for me. I know people that said they will, and faster killers get like huge benefit, like blight and things like that. So I think it'll depend. So just
it's definitely for me gonna be like the killers that can cover the map the quickest are the ones who are going to be most likely to run Lethal Pursuer, because it's going to provide so much value to get on survivors early. It's basically like you're getting a barbecue and chili right at the beginning of the game, right? So you're starting the game off with barbecue and chili, like they're there. I'm going to go over there and get them. So I think it does have more value for some other than other killers, but I think all the perks are really interesting, honestly. Even Hysteria for somebody like me who is like push the gens. I don't really care if I'm injured. And then if I'm injured pushing the gen, somebody goes down and the killer just walks up to me, that's going to create those poop your pants moments, like for me, like, oh my god, the killer's here. So it's going to be like, I'm going to have to pay attention to HUD that I'm oblivious, right? So like it's I think all the perks are really fun for a myriad of reasons. Flashbang obviously is going to be very very fun. I think all of the veteran players are going to have fun making a lot of flashbangs early. I expect a lot of killers are going to be like, you know what? I'm putting on Iron Maiden. I'm tired of all this flashbanging going on. You want to go make your flashbang? We're going to try and make you pay the price for that. So, I expect to see a lot of flashbangs early. Yeah. You make a really good point there, Lydia, about the bite the bullet also being new player friendly. Somebody who's new to the game, it's like basically it's alert for heals, right? So, or sorry, not alert, technician for heals, where you're not making noise when you make these failures. I'm often amazed at these ideas that the devs can come up with within the parameters of the games for these new perks, because sometimes I wonder how deep the well is for these ideas, but then when they come out with this stuff, I'm like, okay, that was interesting, right, how they spun that into a perk. And I will also point out that, remember, we're all talking about the PTB values on all of these perks, and there's quite possibly going to be changes to the values of some of these perks when the chapter goes live. So we're just basing it on PTB values for this stuff, as far as maybe the totem cleansing perk being too OP. That might get nerfed, we don't know. So
also, this might just be the sadist in me, but the first thing that I thought when I saw Hysteria was, what would that play like with Blood Echo? So not only are you oblivious, but you're also exhausted. I may want to try that out again.
Yeah. I'm sure like there's many killer mains out there like, how can I work this into a build?
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think that's the beauty. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I'm excited for legions to make me oblivious every time I see them.
No, I didn't even think about that.
No. Don't heal against legion, and then you're just oblivious. Cool.
I think the beauty of what DBD has done, especially with a chapter like this, knowing that so much, newer players are going to be coming out, the first thing they're going to want is, the this DLC coming out, with MMR coming out, which we'll talk about later. I've seen so many people that are just brand new to the game, rank 20, that I got matched with, that are just playing like Steve or Nancy, because that's what brought them in. So they've done a really good job at, if you really think about it, bringing in perks that not only appeal to the newer players, but to the OG players to mix and match. And then the people that are, trying to play like a tournament level, like Dylan said, with Lethal Pursuer, if you're running something like the Blight or Hillbilly or even Nurse, and you combine that, or, even Oni, you combine that with something like, I don't know, if you're going for a crazy build like Bitter Murmur, and then you have, what's that perk called? Infectious Fright. As soon as you knock someone down, as soon as you find them, you simply just carry on, and you could just get a massive slug going on and, end the game right there. So it's interesting to see, because the newer players will be appealed to it, grab that perk, instantly know where to go. You can start learning the game a little bit more, learning your spawn points, but also on the flip side, if you really want to sacrifice that perk slot and you are confident in your skills of getting that first person down and using your other perks to benefit with that, it still can work. So I think they've done a really good job at creating this balance where the new players can still enjoy and use these perks. The middle players, the casuals, will still have fun and get to enjoy them, and even the people that are like full tryhard mode will still be able to enjoy them as well. All in all, I think the perks are pretty damn good. I think a lot of times people quickly just jump the gun and are looking through like, is any of this going to break meta? No, all these perks suck. But if you really sit down and think about it, create these amazing builds, you can have some really, really, really nasty builds coming up that, you know, nobody really expects either, because they're so used to the meta that is already there.
Yeah. A lot of people want to play casually, and I think a lot of these are for new players, or can be fun for more casual players too, you know. So
right, for sure. And that's gonna take us to our next point. You know, we've been talking about that totem perk going around, and that brings us to Boone Totems coming into the game. We did get a lot of announcements in the roadmap of what's to come. Sadly, we didn't get much. We know that they're going to be making changes to the core mechanics, as they said, whatever that entails, and whenever we get more information, we'll obviously talk about it. But the one thing that they did tell us was Boone Totems are coming into the game. In case you missed it, Boone Totems will be kind of like the opposite of Hex Totems, and they will benefit the survivor instead of the killer. Now again, we don't have much information. We don't know if the killer will have to walk up to this and break it, or if they respawn at different locations, like every 30 seconds or something. We don't know. But it's still fun to speculate and to talk about, and the way I see Boone Totems probably going to be coming into the game is the same way that Hex Totems are. Very high risk, very high reward. And the only couple things that I can think of is just maybe buffs to maybe actions, which I think could be pretty crazy though. If you were to think, at least this is what I think they might be going for, you know, maybe faster healing or faster gen speed, whatever the case may be, which in itself would bring different issues and different things and balancing. But hypothetically speaking, it would be pretty insane. How do you guys feel about Boone Totems? What kind of Boone Totems do you guys want to see coming on in? And what do you think about the roadmap in general, not just the totems as well? Because we had a lot of other things that they mentioned about, which will take us into keys and Moris and things like that. So we'll start off with the Boone Totems. What do you guys think about those?
I got this, King. So if you get enough gens done with the Boone Totem active, you can Mori the killer. Yeah, you got it. There we go.
Killer.
It's a reverse devour hope. We got you now, sucker. But I have concerns about the Boone Totem as far as the pressure on the killer. I'm very curious to see how this is going to work, because I feel like the killer already has so much to do without having to track down this Boone Totem. Even if they know where it is, like, if they can see the aura of a Boone Totem, I feel like they have so much to do that they don't need an extra burden of something that takes time away from them if they have to go and destroy it. So I'm very curious to see what the killer's role is as far as the the Boone Totem remaining in play. That's my big concern. All right, I'll let somebody else talk.
I heard a really interesting theory, and somebody was speculating that the Boone Totem would not be effective right from the start of the game. The survivor would have to go and locate a dull totem and then allocate it to that totem, which I actually think makes a lot of sense, because if you think about it, if we have multiple Boone Totem perks that come into the game and each survivor's running one, the killer's running hex perks, how do you go about assigning those to different totems? Because there wouldn't physically be enough in the game. So
yeah, it's very curious if the killer's running an all hex build with haunted.
Right.
There's no
what
slot
happens?
For it, right? There's no totem for it to go on. So
yeah, and that was something that I thought about as well. I don't see a way how they're going to bring in Boone Totems without having to revisit Haunted, because it's not going to. There's every possibility that you can go through an entire game and the survivor never gets to use their Boone Totem perk. Or whatever it is. I don't personally see a scenario where the game is going to dictate one player having their perk prioritized over another. Like that just doesn't seem fair or reasonable to me. So
could they add an extra totem to the map?
Yeah,
that would
yeah,
have
that's
to be the addendum. If there is no available totem, then one will spawn or something like that.
But then, yeah, if everybody's bringing a boon totem,
How many
depending on
totems
how
are
many there are,
Yeah.
how many totems are going to be on this damn map?
That's
Well-
that's the thing is like 4 people bringing that. Like, what happened?
Noed has entered the chat. So that was one thing that I thought was really quite interesting about it. The other thing, I don't know if this is me just misremembering, but I could have sworn in the actual anniversary stream, in the preview that they showed of Boone Totems, didn't they mention something about having to be within a proximity of that totem to get the effects of the totem? Or am I just misremembering that?
I don't recall
How it would
anything
work
that
at
is
all.
that specific, but I can pull it back up on my side and just see. I don't
yeah.
remember that, but
Yeah, I'm not too.
maybe.
There was so much things. I was like, Nemesis. That's all I'm thinking about. So I'm not too sure actually.
Yeah, I can
There,
just-
you know what they're gonna
Yeah.
do? They're gonna have a instead of killers breaking these totems, they're just gonna have them like blow them out, so you can share totems. Killers just blow them out. But
Make a wish.
it would be interesting as well if, like, adding on to your idea of you having to light a totem, what if you need to stand by that totem and protect it yourself, or be in that totem, as you said, for a certain amount of time before you do get the effect. So let's say it is like something like leader or vigil, and you do stand next to it, and for like 30 seconds to a minute or something, I don't know, something crazy, like you get 5% more movement speed, but you have to stay in there for like 15 seconds or so, which will also make it so that, you know, you're not working on generators, you're going to be by your totem, so it would bring interesting, more new mechanics to the game on if you prioritize your totem, or do you prioritize gens, if that was the route that they would go along with. It's really interesting, to say the least.
No matter
Yeah.
what they are and what they do, I just like the fact that they're freshening up the game with something new.
Right.
Just like when they first brought hex totems in the first place. So I'm eager to see where we go down this road.
Blue flames are also sick, so you know.
Uh-huh.
When I was
Yeah.
playing Street Fighter back in the day, getting a blue Hadouken was always way cooler than. Lydia, you are correct though. I went and did a little research, and it from what Matt said in the stream is they won't be available across the entire map. They have a limited range of some sort.
Nice.
So
Yeah.
that is
So,
interesting.
Is interesting. And I wonder if survivors will get the ability to convert a totem from killer to survivor instead of just cracking it.
Breaking
right?
them,
Like,
right.
Spending 12 seconds to convert it to a boon totem, which would solve the dilemma of breaking killer totems and then not having a totem of your own. The opposite side though is killers are going to have to be able to demolish the totems, right? Like at some point. In my opinion, right? Like if there's a boon totem, if survivors can take down a killer totem, then killers should be able to go like, oh, that's a boon totem, and then like crush it. Which we have the hatch closing animation, like the kicking that we've used to crush the gnome, which may have been a test for crushing these types of totems, in my opinion. You know, to see how that works out if the animation looks like all right. So, but yeah, you guys have brought.
Noam Chomsky was just a guinea pig.
Just the test.
Yeah, you guys have, you know, brought up a lot of good points. That I mean, I don't know. Like I typically think I have answers, but I don't know how do they spawn more totems? Is it like can each person bring a different, you know, boon totem perk, or they have never limited perks among survivors before, so I don't think they'll start now. So there has to be some way to throw it off. It's cool. I like that they gave us almost nothing so that we can't even freak out about it. We have no way to freak out, you know, about how OP they are. But I'm excited.
Wait, are you saying our community does that when they get a smidgen of information that they have a knee-jerk reaction and complain about something?
No.
How
I'm not
dare
saying
you?
that. Random discussion of an auto ban system sent the entire community.
Oh no.
Exactly my thoughts.
Yeah, but I'm excited. Like what Paulie said, and Lydia, I'm excited that they're doing something that'll be different and it'll change the flow of the game. And I think as a community, anyone who listens to this, we should, when these come out, we should be as thoughtful as we can and really, give good feedback, because new mechanics are always a little rough at first, because without proper implementation of the community getting their hands on them, right? They could do all the QA testing they want, but 5 minutes with the community is better than 100 hours with QA. So us getting our hands on it when it comes out, let's be constructive, and because it's healthy for the game to get a new mechanic, it is. So let's try to make it a fun mechanic.
For sure.
And be kind in that process.
Maybe it'll be a combination of those things, like Lydia picking up on that proximity thing was very, very good, and maybe it'll be like that conversion that you talked about. It'll have a proximity, perhaps it'll even have a time element to it, so that you can't run around and start making all the totems on the map Boone Totems.
DC.
So
just I'm done.
It'll have just like a limited scope and time element to it. Perhaps maybe you can convert another totem, but if people go around breaking the totems, then maybe you can't convert them, or maybe you can reconstruct it. I don't know. We don't know, and that's to me, that's what makes it very exciting.
It's like survivors against each other. Like, don't break that, bro. I got a boon. And then
and if you could reconstruct it, then somebody's like, hey man, I don't care about your boon totem. I'm gonna get my inner strength. I'm breaking your stuff again.
That would be good.
To break a fellow survivor's boon totem. Oh my god. This game's gonna be fun. Yeah.
It's inner strength all over again. Ugh.
Small game will be more fun though. If you think about it, because small game tells you what's been cracked, right? So being able to be like, there's only one totem left on the map. I got a boon. I got to use it. Like,
I got a boon.
I got a boon, man. I got a.
Before they changed Ruin, small game was in my build all the time, and then I didn't need it. So I would like reason to get it back. I always love playing small game.
Small game is so fun. I still run small game, so fight me, I guess. Someone, whoever's mad at running small game, I guess. I'm throwing it down. Yeah. So
we're gonna have new rank rewards. If you're red ranks, your totem glows red. If you're green, it glows green. Could you imagine?
Oh, that would actually be lit.
It will be lit. I see what you did there.
Yeah, I'm not funny. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I'm definitely pretty excited for these Boone Totems. But there were some other things that they did talk about. We can touch them quickly. Obviously, we had more information about keys. We had Moris. They said that they want to bring Moris to be, more of a mechanic rather than, just bringing an offering and then, just using it. So now they want you to feel as if you're earning it. I remember a very, very long time ago, someone could probably find the clip. They messed around with the idea, and they said it very loosely, so obviously take it with a grain of salt. But they mentioned that when endgame collapse happens, like, what if all killers were just able to Mori at that point, and it will be like the final stand, basically, for the survivors, running out, and then, like, if you get caught by the killer, you can get Mori'd. I don't know if that's what they're going to do. I don't think that's what they're going to do, because, if you're playing a perfect match as a survivor and then the killer just brings NOED, knocks you down, then you would be very, very upset.
Yeah.
So,
oh god,
it would be interesting. Now, if you're on your last hook, however, obviously we've seen that with Pyramid Head. He has the final judgment, and, it just speeds up the process a little bit. I remember at first survivors were like, this is crazy. But now I think people have come around to the idea that they would have been dead anyways, unless you have some flashlight friends. But what are you guys thinking about it? About keys as well? Keys obviously have been getting a very, very, very lengthy change, and we still don't have the final product of what keys are going to be. I've made many videos on key changes that I think we need, and yeah, how are you guys feeling about keys and Moris?
I think a lot of killer mains. Hi, I'm a killer main. I think a lot of killer mains are kind of frustrated because they feel like Moris are getting this very scrutinizing eye and keys are being ignored. The perspective I want to bring to the table is that I think they tried to rework keys and figured out that is a deeply complicated thing to do because there are 4 survivors. You have to make a key like strong enough for the individual, but not overpowered for a 4-man. You have to make it so that it still does its intended purpose, right? without being too OP. And so I think what happened is, in my opinion, the devs, they turn the timer on Moris and they're like, oh, you have to just take one more hook state. Easy change, just throw it in. Cool. And then I think that keys have been on the drawing board for a long time, but it's far more complicated. And so I think the change to Moris again is to justify a much deeper change that is coming to keys.
I agree.
My opinion on Moris, like I don't run Moris often. And the reason is the minute survivors see that there's a Mori offering, they play harder, sweatier, they DC, and I don't blame them, because when, like, as a survivor, when you see a Mori in your head, you're like, oh, like, am I going to get tunneled just so I get Mori'd? Like, is it going to be a fair game? And then I just get Mori'd at the end, which I wouldn't mind, Like, it changes your perception of the match you're about to go into. And I don't think Moris are, like, the worst thing. I don't even think keys are the worst thing in the game. Like, none of those things are that big of a deal, really. But I think that it changes how you play, and it makes the game unnecessarily stressful, because to me, Moris should be a reward. Like, you played a decent match, you get a little cool animation, you get to feel kind of cool, but there's like you either feel bad or you're made to feel bad for using it, and I think that's a problem. So I think the big change for Moris would be to lock it behind getting a certain amount of hooks. You get 9-10 hooks and you can do something of that nature, right? Because that would encourage that you play a much longer game. It's very hard to you could tunnel all the way to 10 hooks, but I just don't feel like that happens that often, right? Just something to make the game elongated so that you're not getting Mori'd at hook 3, or something like that.
Right.
I don't know though, and I think that it's a complicated conversation. They did mention that Moris and keys are going to operate under the same sort of umbrella, and I don't even know what they're going to do for keys and things of that nature. But I just think that I'm glad Moris are getting changed again, because I want to run them. I think they're cool and fun and unique, but I don't want to make other people feel bad. I don't want survivors to go into a match where I'm playing, if I play a Mori, even if it's a yellow, they don't know it's a Cypress, which means they think I'm just going to Mori everybody that round, right? Like it's stressful.
They're just Shroud of separating all of you.
yeah, maybe.
You never know.
Shroud. But yeah, it is stressful for survivors, and that sucks. When I'm a survivor, I'm like, are we about to get tunneled? I don't want to be tunneled, and so if they can be less stressful, then I'm excited. And simultaneously, if keys can be less stressful, it's not just a one-sided thing for me. But
right.
I don't know. Those are my thoughts. You guys maybe have better thought up solutions.
I'll give my 2 cents. Obviously, I'm now a killer main, was a survivor
Slinger
main,
main.
but
Let's be very specific.
hey. I will only let my reputation be tarnished so much.
You didn't tell me there were going to be this many killer mains here today.
Lydia's like, I'm not a dead Slinger main. Looks in the mirror. Wait a minute, what have I become?
You either live long enough to see yourself become the villain or die a hero, right?
You need to insert her cosplay picture during this part. Everybody can see what she looks like.
Yeah, for reference, she's in half cosplay right now for Death Slinger, so.
Anyway, so yeah, even when I made the transition over to becoming a killer main, my stance was and always has been in the way that Moris used to be, where you used to be able to just bring it in.
Oh
no. Down one survivor, tunnel them off the hook, instant Mori. That was always way more problematic and stronger in my point of view than keys ever were.
Right.
My justification behind that is that obviously it depends whether or not the person bringing in the key is in a survivor friends group where they can allocate somebody to say, hey, run the killer for 5 gens and then we'll get the hatch to spawn and just get out with the key. Or if they're a solo survivor, then what they have to do is they have to make sure that they do an appropriate number of gens in order just to get the hatch to spawn. And I think that's what a lot of people forget, is that you need to, the more people that are in the game, the more gens have to be completed in order for them to actually escape with the key. So, right. And you can prepare for a key as well. You can see it in the lobby. Survivors can't prepare for a Mori. They have nothing to help them prepare for a Mori. They can't just be like, oh, I'm going to put on a stealth build now because I suspect that killer's going to bring in a Mori animation. It was never, in my point of view, they weren't equal in strength. Having said that, I don't like going against keys. I do think they're problematic now, and I do wish that there would be something else added, an extra step at least, for a key to be used, like an animation on the hatch, like we have with the chest animations where you have to fiddle with the padlock and then eventually pull it off. Same sort of thing, add a padlock to the hatch, something like that. But you do need to consider the actual amount of effort that is being put in by the survivors to get that hatch. So if they've completed 5 generators and there's all 4 survivors left in the game, maybe, you know, they have to complete an extra animation, and that isn't too oppressive. But, you know, for a solo survivor, if you've got the hatch left in the game, you've got the 2 exit gates and the killer's basically just cycling between all of them, then it's a little bit different if they're by themselves and they have to do this extra step. So I think there's a lot of different factors that you need to take into consideration when it actually comes to the amount of work that the survivor needs to put in to escape through the hatch. But it definitely should be something that is earned, and not just, oh, we can just have one person looping the killer infinitely until we get all these done, and then we can all get out immediately with one press of a button. So right. There's a lot of different things that need to be taken into consideration when you rework something like this, because you don't want it to become like when Moris got reworked and everybody said, oh, they're useless now, which I don't personally believe. There are still always benefits to using a Mori over picking up a survivor and carrying them to the hook. So I think you need to change them in a way where it's not going to be like, oh, everybody uses their keys up before the change because they're useless now. But also, it's not too easy. Like, it's not a minimal change where we don't really see a difference.
Yeah. Yeah, I think when it comes to key, I mean, like, the most frustrating thing isn't the key itself. I don't mind if there's 2 survivors left, I'm chasing one and the other one keys out and I get a 3K. That's rarely a situation where I'm like, oh, it feels bad, you know. The worst situation for keys is, you know, this is an extreme situation that almost never happens, but it's a 4-man and, you know, they've gotten enough gens done or something like that. You've gotten maybe 6, 7 hooks, and one of them DCs and 3 of them leave with hatch, you know. That rarely happens, but it sucks to see 3 people caterpillar their way through the hatch right in front of your face, you know, and things like that. I think those are when keys need to be removed. I think having an escape option for survivors, you know, that are in solo queue and like, oh, that teammate is being chased, I have no other way to leave, I'm just gonna bounce out, you know, like we've gotten just enough done. I think that's fine.
Definitely the most feel bad moment, like when you're like, I worked so hard, I got an established 3 gen here, one of them's dead, they're not going to be able to get away from me, and then bloop, gone.
Yeah, 3 of them just slide out, they flush themselves, and you go, cool, I never had a chance. Yeah, because you know, that's the thing about keys is usually the most devastating. It's like if a Mori allowed you just to murder 3 people. Like, what, you know, the game just ends like abruptly, and you're like, okay. Or, you know, the final gen gets done, you're chasing somebody, the hatch literally spawns in front of them and they just hop down it. You're like, okay. So yeah, I think, you know, key should be really strong for individuals, but whole team escapes is tough, you know, because with Moris, to kill all 4 people with a Mori, you still have to put in some level of work, just like people do with keys. The difference is 1 key gets 3 people out, and I think that is part of a problem. But I want to reiterate, I rarely have teams fully key escape. I rarely have people actually get to use their keys. So I don't.
That's a good point. I remember playing Survival with friends, and my one friend was bringing a key every game because he said, well, keys are going to get nerfed, so I'm going to use them. And the whole night, he never got a chance to use it because either we escaped normally or he died.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
The key just never came into play.
Yeah. And, you know, I kind of said it earlier, but the one thing I do want to see just like changed is the way that keys and Moris exist in the game leads to like bad behavior, you know, like, oh, there's a key, I gotta tunnel the key user, or oh, it's
Right.
a Moris, so I'm gonna DC, or that's really what I want changed. I don't mind taking an L, but I want there to be a change where those things don't set you up just to feel upset before the match even starts.
Yeah. But at the same time, do you blame the killer because they feel like that key is so dangerous that they want to take it out of the game?
No. I don't blame them. Like it's the same for survivors. I don't blame survivors for being like, oh man, I'm gonna get tunneled out in Mori. Like I agree with both sides of both perspectives of like why it sucks, and that's why I think both things need to be changed in their entirety, because there should be nothing in this game where you see it and you go like, oh god, I don't want to play this round now. There should be nothing in the game that makes you feel that way, and that's why I prefer to see Moris and keys as part of an intrinsic mechanic instead of an item that you equip or an offering that you burn. It would be much better if you couldn't opt to bring those things in and they were just part of a game mechanic that you unlocked at a certain point. You know, like if with killer, it's like if it's the last survivor, then you always get the Mori or something like that, which devalues the Mori maybe a little bit. I don't know, because you'll get to do it more, but you have to work for it. You know, I just think bringing stuff in is stressful, and I don't blame either side for feeling that way about the opposite side. I know there's a lot of mudslinging about like, well, killer's this and well, survivor's that, and like I think that's besides the point, because I think both things put the opposite side into a state of severe anxiety and apprehension in some cases, and that's not fun.
Right, I feel you on that. So yeah, we had a little good discussion there about keys and Moris. We are a little bit over the hour mark, so we'll rush through some of these at the end here. It's just good conversations. So we're gonna talk about balancing now. How the game is doing health-wise, and what you personally, your personal grievances, like what do you think is the thing that needs to be changed next in the game? Or if there is anything. If you think the game is fine and it's in a healthy space, that's awesome as well. So yeah, for me personally, I think one of the biggest issues is, and because there's a lot of different things, but if I had to pick one, I would say the core issue is a little bit with matchmaking. And I think MMR would eventually solve that issue. And obviously, we had MMR coming out and we got it play tested. And, you know, they're still testing. They finished their testing yesterday. I feel like matchmaking is the only thing that can either make or break your game. You know, sometimes you get games where you absolutely dominate survivors, and then sometimes it's the opposite, and that can really dictate how your day is going to go. You know, you could play as survivor, and then you get a really sweaty killer, and there's absolutely nothing you can do, and same vice versa. For me, I think that's the one thing that really dictates everything, and with MMR coming out, I hope they will eventually be able to solve that issue. But for me, that's personally what gives me my grievances. What about you, Lydia? How do you feel about the game's health and the balancing and everything going on?
I think the thing most pressing for me right now is, and probably always has been, is the ranking system. I don't mean in the MMR sense. I mean, you have, what is it, about 70 pips between the rank 1, considered some of the best players in the game, debatably, and then a rank 20, somebody who's never played the game before. There's no other game, especially if there is this more competitive scene that's coming about as of recently, there is nowhere near enough disparity between those two extremes. And I don't know any other game that has a ranking system that is so small, such a small difference in between, you know, considered the worst and considered the best. So I think in terms of rank, we should probably see, I know they're gonna change it soon so that everybody's gonna be put back to rank 20, and then you're gonna have to grind up to rank 1, and it's gonna reward you if you do reach rank 1 or whatever rank that you do reach. But I think in a way that's kind of discouraging to people that do have difficulty reaching those higher ranks, and there's more pressure to perform better. And some people just aren't going to get there, and that's fine. That's okay. There are people that have been playing for years and they still struggle to break into red ranks, and that's all right. So I think by rewarding players for playing a hell of a lot and also reaching a high level isn't probably going to encourage people in the right way. Instead, I think we should just have a much broader range in the ranking system. We should probably have, like, even if it's rank 1 down to rank 30 or 40 or 50, whatever it may be, I think there should be a lot more width. Like, you don't just get 70 SR in Overwatch and then call it a day. That it's a lot more than that. We have other games that have elos of thousands. So that's something that I really want them to see revisit and perhaps reconsider, because obviously we've seen the MMR come in quite a few times, and while I do think it is getting better, people are still overall dissatisfied with it, and there's no sort of end in sight at the moment as to how many trials are gonna have to happen over and over again to actually get this to work. There's also no public knowledge about what goes on behind the scenes to gather this information, but I do think that if they're going to move towards MMR, then there should be some reason for the existing ranking system to stay in the game. If it's going to be some sort of showcase of how much somebody plays or how skilled somebody is, then it really should be a better representative of that, and not just at the moment how it is how often you play the game. How much you play the game is somewhat telling of your rank. In terms of other things as well, I think personally, I mean, Dylan had mentioned this before, but this is probably the best time to come into the game. I do agree with that. And the reason that I say that, there are a lot of people that say, oh, this is the worst state that the game's ever been in, blah, blah, blah. But I mean, you only need to look back at the 2016 footage to know that that is not the case, when we had 2 window killer shack and no entity blocker and Moris on first downs, never mind first hugs. I would not come into the game and stay in the game today if it was in that current state. There's no way I think anybody would, especially now that people are so invested in looping and strategy. There's no way that people would come into a game in 2021 that was in that state.
Right.
So I do think that even if it's not perfect yet, I do think that the game is definitely heading in the right direction in terms of balance, and currently it is the best it's been. So that's just my opinion. I know that people are gonna disagree with that, but
I agree with that though. I think, like, as an OG player, you know, from where the game has come, you know, you're talking about save the best for last, and I don't remember what the other perk was. Unrelenting, right? And you just smack. You're talking about traps under the feet of people on the hook. Yeah, machine gun Huntress. You're talking about, like, OG Tinkerer, you know, Insta Billy, you know, compared to where the game is at now. I think it's come a far way. You don't have, again, like Dylan was mentioning earlier, where you see these things, and I believe in our last podcast almost a year ago, Otz called it the nuclear option, where you go into a game and you're like instantly, I can't win this, I don't want to play this. And, you know, we had those with insta heals, you know, the OG brand new parts, the same with Moris. You know, I think from that point to now, where DBD is, when you look at the big scale of it, it's definitely come a far way. How about you, Paulie? How do you feel about the balance and the health of everything, and, you know, what is your grievances, and what would be, you know, something you would improve if you were, like, in the dev's position?
This sucks. I can't believe I can't recover my exhaustion while sprint bursting around the map anymore. No. I mean,
cut his mic.
Obviously, the devs have done a very good job at looking at all of these quote-unquote game-breaking things and slowly but surely, one by one, addressing them, whether it's the insta-heals, those very powerful toolboxes all getting nerfed, all of these things. The brand new part, oh my gosh, 4 brand new parts, me against Not Queen, and making your life miserable. But I don't even think you need to go back as far as the years that some of you are talking about. Like, we had those dark times where people weren't loading into the game, and we were going on 3v1s, and it was looking like You know, if you analyze the Steam charts, we were going under 10K players because the game was in such a bad state because of some of these bug-related issues. And now we got to an all-time high of 86,000 players at one given time on just amongst the Steam community alone, with no event going on. And to reach that high with no free weekend, no event, and just make an all-time high like that, I think it's a real statement about what a good place the game is in right now. They cleaned up a lot of those weird hits that we had most recently. It's gotten so much better. The palette's not stunning. All of that stuff has been cleaned up a lot. And I think it's a testament to where the game is at right now. And hopefully it's just going to get better. Nemesis chapter is going to bring in so many people. I'm looking forward to it. And I think the most telling factor is all of us are content creators. We see a lot of comments on YouTube and people talk about, man, Killer is so OP. And other people say, man, Survivor is so OP. So I think when you've gotten to that point where nobody can agree which side is more powerful in the game, then it's probably about as balanced as it can be. And let's face it, the asymmetrical nature of this game makes this such a difficult game to balance for the devs. Nobody can agree on what needs to be done to balance it. The devs are doing the best that they can, and they have to do it in a way that keeps the population of the game going. They can't favor one side over the other. Otherwise, you have population collapse on the other side where either nobody wants to play Survivor anymore or nobody wants to play Killer anymore. And if that happens, then nobody's going to be willing to wait for lobbies for the lobby times that are necessary when one side of the population is so overloaded and nobody wants to play the other role. So I think they're doing the best that they possibly can in terms of balancing, and I think it's a wonderful time to play Dead by Daylight.
Do you guys remember the 3-person lobby bug?
Yeah, that was like when I was looking at Steam charts and it was like at the lowest. It was the most miserable time to be playing the game for me personally.
Yeah, because I mean, I wasn't even playing Killer at the time, but the fact that Killer's, their queue times as well were 10-15 minutes just to load into a lobby, and then when you did, you'd have a bug so that 4th survivor would never load in. That, oh god, that's soul destroying. I'm so glad that's gone.
Mm-hmm.
How about you, Dylan?
I agree with everything. I mean, I have a unique perspective. Is like, I'm not really an OG. I've been hardcore playing for a year. I've owned it since 2018, which was a while back, but I dabbled, but I never committed. And I took it upon myself to like look at old footage, right? Like even small stuff. You guys remember Huntress when she came out and when she hit someone with a hatchet, it was like a gunshot? That was weird to me. It was, you know, there's all kinds of things where you see, you know, Wrecker's Yard with 3 windows or Old Ruin or the very first D-Strike, juggling survivors so that you couldn't get hit with D-Strike. Like, the game's in the best place it's been. Now, I think a lot of people conflate that statement with the game's perfect, which is not true. There's every game, if you've been part of any gaming community, has its issues. People still complain about Overwatch balance, and that game is gone through a million iterations, you know. So I think it is the best place it's ever been, you know. And I think the devs do a very good job at balancing both sides of everything. Map reworks that allow for more unique counterplay, right? Old Ormond was awful, so it was balanced to be a little bit better for Killer, but not so overwhelming, you know. D-Strike nerf, pop nerf, Undying nerf, you know, like the back and forth on the nerfs, all of that stuff. It's what Paulie said. It's hard to sit down and go, well, the devs clearly favor one side's OP and one side's not, you know, because if you truly objectively look at it, they do a very good job at putting things right. It feels like Killers maybe get more nerfed because like Killers have powers, but when you really sit down and think about it, it is a lot of back and forth, and I appreciate that. It is the best time to hop in. When I think about what I want for the game, I don't know, and I know that's kind of not a good answer, but I think that what Lydia said rings very true. Matchmaking is a deeply complicated issue. If and when MMR gets implemented, MMR is not a fan favorite in any video game ever. SBMM, skill-based matchmaking, is hated by a lot of people. But people like Apex Legends have implemented it, and they say that it's the healthiest thing for their game because retention is higher amongst new players. They stay longer, they play longer, they enjoy it more. Things of that nature. I could go on a 1 hour tangent about the both sides of SBMM and why I think MMR is good. I do think that the ranking system now is a relic, quite literally, from 5 years ago. Not quite 5 years ago, but it almost seems like it is, and I think that is a problem, because every other game has bronze, silver, gold, platinum, diamond, grand, like they have like 17 tiers of getting there. And so I think that hopefully we get to a point to where, what I would truly like is the community to get to 200, 300,000 players so we can get potential casual and ranked modes, where a ranking system is more deeply complicated, where it does take a very long time to get to the highest level of play possible and is very difficult to achieve. But at the game's current state, which I think the state is good, but the player base isn't large enough to support separate modes. If we're complaining about queue times now, that only gets worse. So my hope is the game just thrives, and in 3 years or in the next iteration of DBD, we do get separated modes that they won't be perfect because it is asymmetrical, but it would hopefully appease the community. Aside from that, I think, what I want for DBD, I just think that the only thing I actually want is more communication from developers, just more honesty, more upfront discussion. When the new animations came out, that was a bombshell. It was like a bubble that popped. We went, what? There's new animations, but for why? And I think that what I would like to see from the devs is more like, hey, so we're working on this. We don't know when it's out, but we're working on this. We figured we'd let you know. What do you guys think? And we've seen that with the facial animations and the reworks there visually. I just wish we would see that more. And I guess I hope.
Oh my gosh.
Seems
Dylan,
like they're doing more. But
Dylan, if you go back a couple of years, it was like Tumbleweed Town where we had nothing coming out.
Yeah, they handed it to you.
There was nothing in the news. They had stopped doing their weekly streams, and we didn't really have any idea what was going on behind the scenes. So right now, I understand you're asking for a little bit more, and to be shown behind the curtain a little bit more. But right now is like the golden age. It's night and day. The community engagement that you see on Twitter compared to what it used to be, like where they have actual scheduled tweets for every single day. For me, they have shored up that communication so much compared to where it used to be. It's hard to even keep up with sometimes for how much information they have coming out of that pipeline. Now, I will agree with you that there could be a little bit more about what does this mean, when is this happening, kind of a thing. Instead of work in progress, you'll know when it's coming out, when you'll know, kind of a thing.
Right.
But just to be given those little morsels is a lot for me.
Yeah, and I don't want to say that what they're doing now is bad. I think from a community standpoint, I think they are still very much in the process of learning. I don't want to say this is going to sound insulting. Learning community management to some degree, and really taking on that tackle. Because one thing we see is they will get on the live stream and go, hey, there'll be an auto ban system, but we don't have a lot to say right now. And it's you had to have known that was going to be an awful play, because every Reddit forum everywhere is now just on fire. And so I what I would like to hear more is more preemptive conversations, and that would hopefully lead to less fires that need to be put out later. And that
I'll agree with you on that point. I find that the whole the whole live stream was kind of like that. It was like, hey, this is going to be a thing, but we're not going to tell you much about it. Like for the whole entire live stream, there wasn't a lot of in-depth explanation on points that what we can expect in the next year. But you could just see how much the community team has grown, because it used to be down to one person handling it all, and now they have an entire team and possibly multiple people who are even quote unquote Twitter guy. And it's just gotten so much better.
Right. Which I'm glad I'm coming at a point where I can sit here and be like kind of taught about that. But yeah, I'll agree. Yeah, I it's hard to get on a stream and be like, yeah, there'll be a ban system, but we can't say anything. And then, it leads to moments of the community feeling like the devs aren't listening. And there'll always be people that are like, the devs aren't listening, which is clearly false if you actually like look at the track record. But when they get up there and they're like, yeah, we're reworking Moris again. Oh, and like also keys too. It's like, you would in my head want to lead with talking about keys, and then so I want to see that stuff tighten up, and I think maybe that comes from a very selfish place. I think that maybe comes from a place of me like trying to like quell people and be the guy who's like, well, there's also this, and trying to lead the opposite perspective, so but yeah, I definitely trust your judgment there, and I think the team does a great job.
I'll completely agree with you that just say, hey guys, we're going to institute autoban. Okay, moving on. That's like a what moment for like everybody in the community. And there's obviously, there may be people who are listening to this podcast and hearing about this for the first time who are also going, what? But we just have to kind of assume that the devs have put a lot of thought into it, and it isn't going to be to the point where people are going to be able to abuse it, where a killer can go, well, they teabagged me, so I'm going to report them and hope to get auto banned. Or, well, that killer killed me, so I'm going to report them and hope to get auto banned. That it won't be that simple to abuse it. Like, we just have to trust in the devs that they have thought of these ways in which it could be abused and exploited, and that it isn't going to be the sky is falling moment for all of us that we're afraid of.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. But
all right.
Yeah.
We are running a little short on time. And we're gonna skip. We're gonna skip right now. You guys are fine.
Us here to talk, King. What do you want us to do?
Yeah. I feel like we spoke a lot about like the last point we have here. So we're gonna scratch it off the list. And there is something that we didn't talk about that I completely forgot. We didn't talk about Nemesis at all, and his zombie friends, and how we feel about him. So we can.
Oh yeah, and like where he sits on tier list.
Right. Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Yeah, we didn't really talk about him too much. So I'm gonna we can go quickly around and give our thoughts on him and what we want to see, etc. For me, I really like him. There's been a lot of comparisons to Pyramid Head, as people always do. They try to compare killers with other powers. So a lot of people naturally were like, is Pyramid Head stronger? Is Nemesis stronger? For me, I think they're unique in their own ways. Their powers are similar, and some have benefits, while some, may have disadvantages in that area. I think he's pretty well balanced. And I favor killers like this more than I do, something like a Nurse or a Spirit, where it's to the point where you can play against them, you can have counterplay against them if you know how to play and what you're doing and how to loop, etc. And there's still a little bit of RNG that can, affect you. But if you do play your killer, correctly, you play good games, you will do good. I think his zombies need to be toned down a little bit when they're next to hooks and like insta-downing you like so quickly, especially like, face camping you or something, which I'm sure they will be looking into. But all in all, if I had to put him on a list, I'd put him like B, maybe B+, in my opinion. What do you guys think?
I agree. Yeah, I would say like B+. I don't think that he holds a candle necessarily to Pyramid Head. I think he's got some sort of deficits that need to be ironed out. Like, there's no discernible reason to get to mutation 3. It takes a lot of effort to give you 1 meter, which is negligible. His zombies, I think, are like if I DS a killer and get dropped right in front of a zombie and a zombie insta downs me, like there are some very, very like nuanced situations that need to be like sort of ironed. But his actual like he feels mostly good. He unfortunately, this is a problem I have with kind of DBD right now. Is a lot of killers fall into tropes, and so he falls into the I hit you at windows and pallets real good sort of trope, and I think that's what makes him strong, but that also can feel sort of played out in a lot of ways.
Right.
That, you know, so that's kind of my complaint, but he feels good. So regardless of that, he feels fun to play. My biggest issue is in what might be a problem for him, and I don't know, it's to be seen. I haven't played a strong team of survivors, but to infect somebody or to get your mutation up, you know, you have to infect someone, and so you have to hit them with the tentacle, and to do so, you know, they get to sprint away, and their sprint is shorter because they become hindered. It's not the normal, you know, full 1 second sprint, but it's like at the beginning of the game, your first 2 chases, you have to hit 3 times, which might, I don't know if the counterbalance to like hitting someone through pallets is like worth it, because Huntress can just sort of like do that, and Slinger can just sort of do that, and so it's like you have a lot more buildup for a power that is okay, you know. It lacks range and things like that. So I think he's strong. I think he's fun. I think he lands in a B pretty well, and I think he lands in a B because of the deficit of like having to build up that power and infect people, right, and waste a lot more time at your first 2 chases. So but you know, out of PTB, like they might change him, and obviously he'll get a mid-chapter change, like hopefully Trickster does soon. So but yeah, I think he's strong, and I think he's fun. I don't think anyone buying him will find that they are. I think people might struggle because, you know, like I said, you have to kind of choose when to infect and when to M1 and all that. But I think that he'll do pretty fine at a high level of play.
All right. How do you feel, Lydia? What do you think about him?
I like to reserve comment until I've played against a lot of different types of survivors. I've played with as many perks as I can, figured out all of his add-ons. So yeah, I want to invoke my right to remain silent.
Lydia's like, I'm not taking heat for this one. I don't want to say anything. You know what? When Death Singer came out, I made a video like the next day, and I was like, he's better than Huntress. And I like 1 week later, I was like, yeah, here's my tier list video. Huntress is better. So yeah, fair enough. What about you, Paulie? Are you playing the fifth?
Again, we got to mention that we're going on PTB values, and we don't know what the full release is going to be. And you don't always, like Lydia said, you don't always get a good grasp of what they're capable of, because when you play the PTB, the matchmaking system goes out the window, and you can be with somebody who's a rank 20 who just wants to try the killer, and you don't necessarily get the feel for all the capabilities of a killer in that way. So all I have to say is, when a survivor comes along, you must whip it. That's for all you old people out there. I think it's an interesting that for me, Nemesis requires you to do gens quick. It's one of those killers that they can snowball on you. If he's going to get up into his tier 3, you want to just start working on the gens, and you can also tier up by destroying his zombies too, right? So he doesn't necessarily have to whip survivors to do that. So I think he gets stronger as the game goes along, so it's probably to your advantage to try and end the game as quickly as possible. But I think he's fun to play as and play against. And can we just talk about his rig? Like, I completely expected for him to just be skinned onto the Trapper rig, and the same size as your typical tallest killer in Dead by Daylight, and just to seeing how monstrous he is, where he tucks the survivor under his arm.
On the way he runs.
Oh my gosh. And when if you're playing killer and you customs and you can turn the killer to face you in the camera, how much of the screen he takes up, he is just a beast. it's very impressive. I never would have expected them to.
Right.
I'm assuming they created a new rig, but it could just be that they extended the rig. The skin just goes way up. But yeah, it's super impressive.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
for
audio
sure.
design on him feels good too. Like, there's no other killer that has footsteps that like hit the low registers of bass that make me feel good. You know, like you hear him thumping at you, and it's cool. It feels really, really cool. Makes Tinkerer a little useless because sneaking up with him is not going to be great, but it sounds cool to hear his platform boots coming at you. So yeah, all balance concerns aside, I think that fans of Nemesis are gonna like him. I mean, I like him a lot, and I think it'll satisfy new players that want to come in and just play their like favorite Resident Evil killer or whatever, you know. So
For sure. Yeah, all in all, amazing chapter that they've done, and I can't wait. But my friends, that is pretty much going to do it for us. As we always do, we end off with a goodbye, and, you know, if the devs were listening, what would you like to say with them? So we will start from left to right, and yeah, Dylan, if the devs were listening, what would you like to say? Any final remarks as well? Any plugs you want to do? You can go for it.
yeah, I mean, if any devs listen to this, I think you guys are doing well. I think you have a very difficult job, and there's a lot of like vitriol that goes your way, but you know, I think you're doing well, and I think that I hope that stuff doesn't tear you down as much as the good stuff brings you up, you know. My own stuff, my own plugs. I actually have my own podcast called I'm All Ears. It's a Dead by Daylight podcast. It's typically weekly. You can find on your favorite podcast services. I have a YouTube. That's where I would prefer to, if any of you do anything, check out my YouTube, youtube.com/DyllonKG. Tutorials so in-depth that we break out the crayons and we draw it for you. So, and news, that's an addendum. So that's me. You can find me on Twitch as well, but if you go to YouTube, you'll probably remember that you could find me on Twitch, DyllonKG as well.
Sounds great. Lydia, you're up.
Okay, so if any developers are watching, I'd just like to point out I am the only non-fog whisperer here.
I can vouch for Lydia.
But yeah, no, in all seriousness, you can find me Twitch, YouTube, everywhere is just at EarthToLydia, except for Snapchat because somebody took that before I got the chance to get it. So yeah, but you can find me there.
Sounds good. And Paulie, you're up.
Well, to any devs listening, I just want to say, send me a prototype of Dead by Daylight Funko Pop, please. I'll love you forever. No. Yeah, I mean, I think the devs do a great job, and they get a lot of criticism that they don't always deserve. And, you know, walk a day in someone else's shoes is all I would say to that. And as far as finding me, yeah, I'm on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube. Don't follow me on YouTube because if I get to 100,000 subscribers, I'm gonna get a play button, and my son wants it. And well, does my son really deserve a play button? Ask yourself that. So make sure you don't follow me on YouTube. Thank you.
Alrighty. And yeah, I guess I'm last. We all seen what you guys did to Meg in the trailer, and Meg and I will be pressing charges. We will be seeing you in court very soon. And yeah, guys, that has been a podcast. Thank you to all these lovely people that have joined me today and had amazing conversations with us. We're, again, going to all be participating in the ALS DVD charity event. Again, this will be taking place on July 10th and July 11th. You guys can learn more about it in the description below. Go and show everybody love as well. And thank you guys for listening and making it to the end. It was a lot of fun. We had some good discussions, and I'm sure we're going to talk even more about things like this. And take care, everyone. Huh?
Wait, King. I just want to interrupt you. For the Light in the Fog event, I just want to mention that there are over 100 of your favorite content creators from Dead by Daylight who are taking part in that Light in the Fog event. So please come out and support us, even if it's just to watch. You don't have to necessarily monetarily donate. Just you being there and increasing the viewer numbers on that event would be incredible. We would love to see all of you there for this ALS awareness and tribute for Puppers event. Sorry.
Absolutely.
No, you're fine. You're 100% fine. And yeah, guys, that's going to do it for us. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you guys in the fog.